All right, welcome back to First Generation Bowhunter. I am your host, Adam, and I'm excited for episode 81 because we're going to be doing a hunt recap, talk about this last weekend at the Utah Archery Opener for deer. Really cool tag that I got, and I want to talk about the story and kind of break down a few things that I know are going to help you because just some light bulbs are going off as things were happening. Tons of surprises happened, and I got an incredible opportunity to shoot this really cool deer, but I missed. But I want to talk about why and a couple other things that happened. So, should be a really good episode. Look forward to sharing this with you. Also, I'm going to do a little bit of a gear review on the Speedland shoe here, the Cameron Hanes shoe. I've had this for about 2 months. Some things I like, some things I don't, but there's been a lot of hype on those shoes and I've actually used them. So I want to talk about that towards the end. Let's dive in. And if you're new to First Generation Bow Hunter, this is for new bow hunters just trying to get in and be able to get an animal with a bow. So bop around, find other episodes. I've got ones on how to choose a bow, just other techniques, things that can help you. This episode is definitely going to have some things that I've never shared before. So I'm pretty pumped about it, and I hope it's going to help you. So, and if you are liking what you hear, please share with another first generation bow hunter and just pass it along. That would be super, super supportive and much appreciated. If you really like what you hear as well, hop over to iTunes, drop a review, and let me know and give me any feedback as well. Hop on Instagram. You can message me, Adam_Buchanan. Drop me a line. Any questions, any ideas you have for upcoming episodes. I've turned a lot of questions into full episodes. So yeah, and I do reply to all my messages as quick as I can. So don't be afraid to reach out. And you can also find merch on my website, huntworks.com, HUNTW. So you can get a shirt like this, First Generation Bow Hunter, sport it at the DMV or wherever you hang out and do errands. So, well, let's dive into this hunt recap. And yeah, pretty excited about it. And hopefully it's going to help a lot of people. So, went up Saturday night and I e-biked in about 7 miles from the trailhead. And it was running smooth. I got to camp with about 2 hours of sunlight, glassed a little bit, and there was a storm earlier that day. I like storms. Storms are awesome because all the animals bed down and they're kind of taking cover. They're comfort animals, right? So they're just like us. And so didn't see much that night. I was a little surprised. I was in the perfect spot, had plenty of light. I actually was carrying my bow around with me. I didn't know if I was going to be able to get a shot or an opportunity, but nothing was popping out. I couldn't see anything, and I was a little surprised, to be honest. I mean, I'm at 8,500 feet, and there was just nothing. It was a cool night. I did glass up a moose around 7 o'clock. And in that area, there's moose. You're going to run into a moose, so it's pretty common. So it's cool, but not mule deer I was after. So I watched a lightning storm from about 30 miles away, and it stayed there forever. It wasn't moving at all. And then all of a sudden, it was moving right towards me. So I had the most wild, probably one of the most wild nights I've spent in a tent. Lots of rain, complete downpour. One of my zippers on the tent fly was like kind of blown, when the teeth don't match up. And there's kind of like an opening in the tent fly. Thankfully, it wasn't like too high, it was more down low. But one thing I did to fix that was I don't know if you've seen those night eyes, like gear ties. They sell them everywhere, like at Walmart and stuff in the sporting goods section. But I took the two, like the bottom of the fly, how the zipper kind of brings two pieces of fabric together, where there's two little gear loops on there. It wasn't great, but I had that quick tie and I tied those together, and it brought the fabric together to kind of help a little. It wasn't perfect, but yeah, found that out like 5 minutes before the storm hit, and I was freaking out. I was like, shoot, this sucks. But it was a cool little hack. And then the other thing I did before we dive into the hunting side of things, but I just thought this was worth sharing. I had a fire going, and when I'm hunting alone, I really like fires because it just feels like there's someone else there with me, and I'm a huge fan. Well, I found a bunch of rocks and kind of built this rock igloo around the fire, and I built it up and put a big rock up on top. And I was thinking in my mind, I'm like, wouldn't it be kind of cool if I could figure out a way to keep a fire going, even though there's a downpour? I'll be honest, it worked for about an hour, hour and a half with all the downpour. I'd look out the tent and I could still see my fire going. And it was really, really cool. The thing I think that happened was, on top of the rain, obviously, but I think I just ran out of wood. Like, it burned it up so hot, because when you build up the rocks like that, there's airflow coming in from everywhere, but it's still kind of covered. So it creates this, like, I don't know if you've seen the solo stoves. I have a solo stove, like, fire pit. And when you're dumping that much oxygen and flow into a fire, yeah, because I woke up the next morning and it was just like powder, like no remnants of coals or anything. It burned so hot. So it's kind of a cool little experiment that if you're really in a sticky situation, try building up like a rock igloo around your little fire, and you could keep it going. I mean, that could be kind of a game changer and kind of a mental booster as well. It's what it was for me. Even when I woke up and saw that it had worked, I was like, that's kind of cool. Like, it's fun to have like a little win. You don't just have to kill an animal and that be your win, right? So got up the next morning, glass first thing, and just wasn't seeing anything. Like, nothing was on their feet. And I just, wasn't running into anything. The one thing why I think that I wasn't seeing a lot of animals either the night before, when storms are coming, deer, birds, wildlife, they know way more than we do around storms and weather. So what I've heard in the past is when barometric pressure is going up or down, they're sensing it, and they live outside, right? So we don't, and they know way more than we do. And so that's partly, I kind of attribute not seeing a lot of animals the night before, thinking that maybe they were getting a couple hours head start. They were bedded down. They didn't want to be caught out in the open. Just my theory. It's a working theory. Can't be able to prove it yet, but I have heard of that animals tend to kind of know what's coming before we do. Well, I get up, glass some more, kind of looking for opportunities, and just nothing. Like, nothing was out. And so went back to camp, had some, been really like in peak refuel. Not sure if you've tried that freeze dried meal. I'm also a freeze dryer guy. Behind me there over my shoulder, I've got my Harvest Right. Really fun hobby. It's pretty cool in terms of like prepping and whatnot. I wouldn't consider myself a prepper, but I like the idea of taking the leftovers of a meal and freeze drying it and preserving it. Peak refuel, really, really strong flavors, probably some of the best. I got to try the Stephen Ranella flavors just recently over at Black Ovis. They've done a good job. They did a buffalo mac and cheese and goulash and stuff. I really like the home style chicken, pretty good. And then the biscuits and gravy, good but big. I mean, I couldn't even get halfway through that stuff. So it's kind of a bummer having all that food left over. I was trying to like hang on to it for like later morning, but anyway, just a little bit of like backpacking info and fodder. Sometimes that's helpful too for people maybe doing some overnight spike camp type stuff. Well, 9:30 comes, and I'm out there kind of looking around, and see a deer up top this peak that wasn't very far from the trail. So I had hiked up, and I was just going up there to glass. And this is one of the lessons I want to like share with you. And a mistake that I had made was I didn't have my bow in my hand. It was on my backpack. And I see the deer from 90 yards away. 90 yards is close. I mean, you're, 90 yards is, for some, that might be shooting distance. For others, it's get a freaking arrow. You've got an arrow knocked already. Like you're going to be pulling back here soon after some chest moves. Well, I was out in the open. The sagebrush is covering my ankles. Basically, I have no cover. And in my mind, I wasn't thinking scent. I wasn't paying attention to the wind. I was thinking eyesight. And deer, I mean, they can see you but not see you, but when they smell you, they're gone. And I don't know why I just wasn't thinking scent. I was thinking all about sight. So I was like, I got to get cover. I got to, be able to get set up and get a shot. Well, the buck is coming towards me about 90, 95 yards away. And I'm like, man, this thing's coming right at me. Like, this is crazy. Normally, when I see something that far away or they see me, you kind of lock eyes. It's kind of that, what are you? They're on pins and needles and they bounce, or you are able to get an arrow out and take a shot. Well, he ducks behind a tree and I'm like, I'm going to close this distance. And this is another thing I want to share with you. It was windy, but the noise didn't bother me. And I wasn't worried about cutting through some of that, the brush. And so I got to a really good spot, great cover, and I'd closed the distance by 30 yards, which was awesome. I'm like, oh, heck yeah. So when I ranged him again, we stepped it out in front of the tree. It was 55 yards. So I'm like, sweet, I'm pulling an arrow back, pull it back. And I'm excited. I'm not methodical like I normally am. My mental game was not great. And I also felt this urgency of like, I have no time. And that right there in itself was a mistake. I had plenty of time. The deer was very comfortable. I kept thinking like, oh, he sees me. And I think he finally did. When I was drawn back, he finally did. And that's what was kind of rushing me a little bit. But I missed, right? I missed that first shot. And I was like, oh, shoot, and it bounces, but not far. Like it kind of sprints for like 10 yards. And I'm like, oh, he's out of here. And then he just stops. And I'm like, holy cow. So I'm like, get another arrow. So I get another arrow in. I'm like, I'm going to get another chance on this thing. Well, technically he came closer to me, but I thought he kind of was just doing a circle and keeping that 50-yard distance, which is a terrible mistake on my part. Mistake number 4 so far in this hunt. Well, he gets to another clearing, passes a tree, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting an arrow in, all this stuff. I'm like, dude, I'm going to get another friggin' shot on this thing. This is crazy. Well, I was about ready to do the doe bleat type thing where you'd be like, meh, and it stops them in their tracks, and that helps get a shot off, right? Kind of just gives you that 10, 15-second distraction for them. Well, it gets in the clearing, and I range him at 45 yards. And I'm like, okay, yeah, he's a little bit closer than what it was before, but he's in a totally different area. It's kind of like a quarter moon away from where he was. And pull back. I'm like, dude, I'm going to be packing meat out. Like, this is crazy. I mean, I did something I don't like to do and I should never do. And I've made a lot of mistakes doing is I got excited. I got way excited and I got way overconfident. Pull back. I'm like, sweet, here we go. Release the arrow and complete miss. I'm like, oh, but I did thought I hit him, but I think it was the sound when the arrow crashed behind him. Anyway, I was all sorts of crazy. Like my mental game was a D-. Like it was not good. And so clean misses on both, no blood, all that, and retrace my steps, kind of I do this a lot. And this is part of one thing I like about the kill shot or releasing an arrow is kind of replaying everything. And it's really important to replay everything and drop onyx points in the area. Onyx is really kind of a cool tool as well, where you can be like, hey, I was standing here, and then the deer was standing here. And you can range that, but I like drawing line of sight distance lines on Onyx because it'll give you like 55.6 yards, from point to point. And that, isn't maybe perfect, but gives you a nice little reference, right? So I like to replay all that. I think it's really, really important. But when I replayed the second shot and miss, I concluded he was at 30 yards. So I was way off on the pin, way off on the range. I must have ranged something that was around him, but I was in a rush and I just felt like I didn't have time. Especially after the second shot, I'm like, all right, I gotta release an arrow. And if I just would have slowed down a little bit more. It's hard though. Like when you're in that moment and you're just like, dude, this is gonna happen. This is great. You start acting pretty dumb. And that's what cost me a lot of deer in the past and a lot of misses was I just was too excited. And so lesson learned. I share that with you just to give you a reminder, go in as mentally prepared as possible and also go in, get that bow in your hand. You don't have to knock an arrow at all times, like while you're walking around. The other reason I struggle with knocking an arrow is like there'll be places I'll be kind of going and I'll run into hikers, I'll run into bikers, that type of thing. And so you don't want a broadhead flailing around, so it's good to get away from people. This particular area, you're already at the peak, 85, 9,000 feet. And it's tricky because you're kind of sharing things. I mean, I took shots at this deer 50 yards off the trail. And I was thinking I had to go in deeper. I thought, I've got to go in pretty far. And no, it was right off the trail. And I was flinging arrows. So it was interesting. And I'm always got that public land, respect for others, kind of mantra. And that's just kind of how it is where I hunt. I joke with people that I have a lot of access to public land. And it's what I've been telling people this season. Well, that was my hunt. And it kind of mentally, it wasn't that I missed that mentally shut me down. I think it was more about the 2-hour lightning storm that was above my head. I mean, I woke up at 3 a.m. The tent was like bright white, loud. I mean, it was a gnarly night. And I think it mentally shook me more than I gave it credit for. And I just hunting mode, I was like shooting a bow mode, and there's a massive difference. You're either hunting or you're shooting a bow, and you've got to merge those two. Because if you're doing just one or the other, you're not bow hunting. It sounds so dumb and obvious, but I share that because that's a real deal. That's a real struggle. So it was a fun hunt. And that was the other thing too, is like the buck wasn't big. It was like a 2x2 in velvet. I wanted to shoot it, like it was a day into the opener. It was the second day of opener. And I was like, you know what? I want to shoot this buck. I think it's a cool buck. And I'm still like, I'm pretty far into this. I'm almost 10 years into bow hunting. I'm not really after antlers. Like a big bull or a big buck would be awesome. But also the hunt, the situation that you find yourself in is also part of that experience, because like if someone wants to sit down with you and be like, hey, tell me about that buck you shot. It's like, okay, here was the setup. Like that to me is part of the trophy, and, but what happened is, and this is what I wanted to share as we kind of stand back and assess what was going on. The wind was carrying my scent up the mountain and kind of did this circle thing. And because I felt like the wind was blowing at my face, which is what you want. So, yeah, I wasn't paying a lot of attention to the wind, but I was, because I know that instinctively, like if I've got wind blowing at the back of my head and blowing my scent towards the animal, I'm screwed. So the wind was blowing at me, but again, I'm kind of on a ridge situation, and as I sat back and kind of paid attention, the wind was doing this circle thing and carrying my scent above the buck, driving him towards me. It was wild. It was the wildest thing, because before the first shot, it was coming right towards me, and I was kind of standing in front of a open meadow, a little bit more food. I think, could have been starting to feed or whatnot. Not a lot of water up where I'm at. You have to carry in your own water. The deer are finding springs somewhere. Anyway, it was that was wild to me that you could have that situation happen. I've never had that, because I've always been taught, like, scent is everything. Be very mindful of scent. But that whole swirling effect, oh man, like, especially after the second shot, that thing is like still coming at me. I mean, 30 yards. Holy cow. Like, anyway, it's just, as I replay it, that deer was a whole lot bigger at 30 yards than it was at 55. And I should have known better. So it's like, you got to trust your equipment, but you got to slow down. We have more time. And you know what? If you do take the time and get a good range and you get set up and you're like, hey, I'm looking at the right pin. That's the other thing. I get worried about looking at the wrong pin. I'm always like, okay, I got to slow down, line up my pin. But if you just have that extra 5 seconds and get it done right, you're going to place a really good shot. Now, if he bounces, or the doe or whatever you're hunting takes off and you miss the opportunity, well, it's better that you took the time to get it lined up. That's the other thing, is we put all this money, time, effort. I mean, I'm on an e-bike. I ride 7 miles to this area. I'm away from my wife and kids, and we put all this work into it. And, releasing an arrow is seconds. I mean, it's minuscule. It's microscopic compared to the amount of time we take to get that opportunity. So if the animal bounces and you took a little bit of extra time, it's probably better, because you probably would have placed the shot really, really well, knowing that you're confident in the range, you're confident in everything else. So yeah, that's just some learnings there, and just want to pass that along. I'm going to do a whole e-bike episode. There was so many things I picked up on this last trip that, if you're getting into e-biking, I really need to tell you some things, because I think there's so many mistakes, and people just go buy the $3,000 bike. Looks cool, looks rad. I'm going to attach a shotgun to the back of it or whatever. Like, I'm thinking Walking Dead, Mad Max style. That's how I look at my e-bike. I'm like, dude, end of the world. I'm on it. I'm going to freaking crush. Quietly, of course, right? So, like, I want to do an episode on that. There was just so many things that stuck out to me, and I climbed right 1,500, maybe 2,000 feet on that climb. So, just a few things I want to share. Also, I want to talk bino harnesses for a second. So, I was doing the Muley Freak Game Changer, and it has the little pouch next to the bino pouch. And it was to hold the rangefinder. And normally I don't do that. And here's the thing. It's cool to try new gear, but if you're trying too much gear and too many different variables and getting away from what you know and are comfortable with, there's a massive risk in that. I just was like, a bino harness is a bino harness. Like, they're all created equal. And that was a pretty bad mistake. That was a terrible mistake, because they're not created equal. They're all designed a little bit different. And there's nothing against Muley Freak. I just hadn't spent enough time in it to really, be proficient in it. And what I mean by that is, when you're, getting the rangefinder out, you're ranging, you're putting it back in, that just simple movement is kind of the most critical piece, because that's what happens before you release an arrow. And if that's not smooth, quiet, efficient, accurate, it's, and I felt like I was fumbling, because in my old bino harness, I've got an old Mystery Wrench one, and I've used the Glass Pack Vortex one as well, with the little mesh side pouch. And I'm just so proficient with it because I can use it without looking at it. And, I pull the rangefinder out, use it, great, done. I'm still looking and locking eyes with the deer, and I put that rangefinder back and it fits in perfect. I've got the system. Oh man, I was fumbling with that Muley Freak. Like, I just wasn't used to it. And it kind of pained me a little bit. And I'm not placing blame on a bino harness company like, oh, you made me miss. I'm human. I'm not obnoxious. It just is something to think about. If you're going to introduce something new to your system, you got to do it. Like, you've got to put the time in and use it and make it work. All these companies build great gear. It's, are we putting enough time into it to really optimize it, make sure it works? So I like their harness. It's comfortable. I probably am going to remove that pouch and just use the Lycra like side little slip pocket with the metal side arm like belt clip on the rangefinder. And then you just clip it in. So that's just kind of a factor and something I was thinking about, because I introduced a lot of new elements and a lot of new gear on this trip. I mean, I'm shooting a Sever broadhead, never shot a Sever broadhead. The thing with Sever that I do want to call out, and speaking of new gear, was I didn't love how I was putting the arrow back in the quiver and the little mechanical blades are sticking out. And if you compress one of those up against the side of a quiver or whatever, it'll open that blade as it should, but it's premature and it's got a little rubber band on there. It's teeny, and I might have one here. Yeah, they're so small I can't even find it. And oh, there it is. Yeah, look at that. It's super, super small. So they're small. I mean, they're size less than my fingernail. And I broke one of the rubber bands, and so I'm like fudging with it, trying to get the blades back in. I had a little SOS kit that I was pretty stoked on. Jace, who I work with at Camo Fire and Black Ovis, mine's smaller for my camping and backpacking, but it's just got like tons of cracks, all sorts of stuff. And I'm gonna get better at the serving and D loops and stuff like that. I've got to get better at that. But I was so glad I had that because I had an extra rubber band. But that broadhead would have been total junk, right? I don't think you can shoot them without that rubber band, from what I understand. So that was a little bit of a frustrating point, but also it's my own fault for not really dry running my gear. And so if you've still got time until your opener, I would highly recommend you go out as if you're hunting. Broadhead, full camo, full everything. Like, get in your get up as if you are hunting. You're going to pull back and shoot a deer. And I would highly recommend doing it. Pull that arrow out and maybe shooting some soft sand or something. Even maybe pack a target, like a mobile target. It's a good training, carrying up that heavy target. Go set it up on a hill, go shoot an angled shot. We're so comfortable in our flat shots in the backyard. It's like, okay, well, what if they're high above you? I mean, I can't tell you how many deer I've killed that are above me. I'm always below them. I'm trying to think if I've shot any that are I'm above them. It's pretty rare actually, but it's all angled. Everything is angled. It's not like it is in the backyard. Oh no, there was one I shot at last year. It was down. It was way down. Oh yeah, that was a cool hunt. And just run your gear, because that's where you're going to find all this stuff. It's sucky to find it happening at your hunt and you're like, oh my gosh, like you could make a pretty bad mistake, right? If I hadn't had rubber bands for the Sever, that would have been terrible. Right. So that's the hunt. That's what I want to talk about. And that hopefully helps you and gives you some ideas of things you should slow down and try to mentally prepare. Wanted to talk about our Speedland shoe here. This is it's that Cameron Haynes endorses and co-created with them. I've had it for about 2 months, month and a half since it launched. I signed up for the pre-order. And I'll be honest, give you a little background. I have really bad knees. So running for me has been really hard. I tore both my MCLs a few years ago. And so still want to stay in shape and keep training and whatnot. But running has just been like, I can't find a shoe that I really like. So this I can best describe as like an ultra. It's very wide. It's, you can see that's about the width of my hand. So it's kind of that ultra footwear type vibe. The other thing I want to point to is the midsole. It is thick. I mean, almost 3 fingers thick. It's huge. And it's a Michelin midsole, which I didn't know. I thought they just made tires. And incredibly comfortable. It feels like you're on a cloud. I can't not wear these. I mean, I wear them to work. I wear them everywhere. I try not to mow the lawn in them because I don't want them turning green. Comfy shoe. I like all of that comfort and fit. The tread is very non-aggressive. You can see there, this is a great road shoe. I use it for road. I use it for trail, but it's not massive lug system there. The other thing to point out is the insole is super aggressive. You can see how, it's got that really aggressive toe. And so kind of matches up well. Just kind of keeps that roll forward there. But I've never seen an aggressive sole like that. So maybe, obviously I'm not a big runner, but all right. I need to critique this shoe and share some things that I was not incredibly stoked on. Okay, I'm a BOA guy. I love BOA. If you're not familiar with BOA, this is a lefty loosey. No, lefty tighty. That's right. These are backwards. So to tighten these, you just spin this little BOA system, and then to unlock it, you just pull the BOA out if you're watching the video. Here's the thing. 2 BOAs right next to each other is excessive. It's way excessive. I open these up on accident all the time. So I don't love that. The other thing, the reason why I show you this view right here, this BOA needs to go. I want to rip it off the shoe because honestly, it gets ripped off anyway when I'm getting in a car or something dumb. So I honestly hope they got to figure out a way to just have one BOA and maybe move it just slightly in between these two. And it does all the lacing, for those access points. Just be my thing. But having 2 BOAs right next to each other has been a pain. And Speedland, I think they have a single BOA. I thought I saw one, but maybe not. But Cameron Haynes, he's working with them, obviously. I think he's got one more shoe that's coming out. I think it's the same shoe. It's just different color designs. The first one was pretty cool. It was blue. It had elk blood all over it. Maybe it was deer blood. Who knows? But simple. I wouldn't say you're going to get style points. They are big. I'll be honest, they kind of feel like a clown shoe a little bit. But again, I'm 40. I got no one. I really do like them. They've done a good job, but they are expensive as all get out. I paid full price for them. Did not get any deals. They're not paying me to say nice things about these, and I wouldn't say I'm saying ultra nice things about them. Would I get this pair again? Yes, I think I would. They just work so well when you've got torn MCLs. I've got to go for comfort. I was really going through the shoes this last year trying to find something, and then these came up for sale again with the pre-order, and I was like, you know what? I got to do it. They're expensive as all get out. I actually sold old shoes to help pay for these because I was just like, oh, it's a gut punch. That's so much money. But hats off to the team. I think Speedland's a cool company. I was, made aware with it, with Cameron and all that. But if you're like me and you do have some bad knees and you just have tried everything, Speedland truly is something different and way unconventional. I've never seen a shoe like this. I'd say Hoka probably comes close, but that aggressive midsole with how thick it is, how light it is, it's been good. So I can't endorse it, but it is unpaid. I am unsponsored by them. So, well, that's been episode 81. Hopefully that story helped you with your upcoming hunt. And just slowing down, getting your mental game on top, try to let go of the storm that kept you up all night. I look back at this whole thing and I had a great hunt. I enjoyed myself, but I could definitely kind of replay back some things and be like, all right, could have done things a little bit different. I got the message. There you go. So best of luck on your hunts. Hopefully your opener is starting soon. Drop me a line on Instagram, Adam_Buchanan. Buchanan, just like the president. Hopefully you successfully passed fourth grade, James Buchanan or whatnot. No relation, by the way, and no relation to Pat Buchanan, if I know you're wondering. Drop me a note on Instagram. And then I'm also on LinkedIn, Facebook. You can find me. I wear this shirt in most of my profile photos. So that is me. And you can also get shirts like this at huntworks.com. HUNTWURX. Yeah, I know. I spelled it stupid, but yep, go to that, sign up for the email list. And then this is episode 81. Here, coming up on episode 100, going to do a fairly substantial giveaway. So you're going to be up for grabs for some pretty sweet gear. So keep an eye out for that. I'm pretty pumped, and it's been a fun journey with First Generation Bowhunter. So thanks for supporting and subscribing and rating and sharing it with others. I love all the stories that come through. I read all the messages I get, all the questions. Sometimes your question can become an episode. So shoot me what you've got, what pain points you're feeling, frustrations, and successes too. Like if you just got a new bow and you're stoked on it, or you're hitting really good groups, or hey, you got your first animal. Awesome. I want to hear about it. I truly do. So you can always use hashtag First Generation Bowhunter as well. I like to scope that out. So, all right. Well, thanks so much for joining and for being a subscriber. Watch for more episodes and content coming up. Heavy this season. I've got some more stuff coming, and watch for that e-bike episode. Hopefully that helps you if you're pulling the trigger on an e-bike.